You're listening to the Journey Podcast. Are you curious about the art of nourishing your body, mind, and spirit? Join us on a journey into holistic nutrition. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore the realm of holistic nutrition, where we explore the transformative approach of addressing the root causes of illness and promoting holistic well-being. Throughout our conversation, we uncover the invaluable insights that holistic nutrition offers, particularly in the context of conditions like PCOS and inflammation. With a focus on personalized care and a comprehensive understanding of the mind-body connection, we delve into how nourishing our bodies with intention can lead to profound healing and vitality. As we navigate the landscape of holistic nutrition, we shed light on the profound impact of addressing underlying imbalances in the body, paving the way for lasting wellness. By delving into the nuances of PCOS and inflammation, we reveal how this approach goes beyond merely treating symptoms, empowering us to create sustainable shifts that support our overall health. Hilary Beckwith is a nutritional therapy practitioner and is board certified in holistic nutrition by the National Association for Nutrition Professionals. Hilary has a long health history of PCOS, irregular menstrual cycles, infertility, hypoglycemia, difficulty losing weight, cystic acne, migraines, and chronic pain. Working with healthcare providers for many years to find answers, she was often met with dismissal or band-aid solutions, never understanding the why behind her symptoms. Upon recognizing a great need for better support from our healthcare system, Hilary began doing her own research to get to the root of her health conditions, and in 2019 decided to formally train in nutrition so she could help individuals become more intuitive to their body's health needs and learn to advocate for their health. Following a near 20-year career working in physical medicine, counseling chronic pain patients through dietary work to help reduce systemic inflammation and pain, Hilary founded Well Roots in 2021 to help individuals get out of the diet cycle and find relief from their symptoms long term. Here is my interview with Hilary Beckwith. Hi, Hilary. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because advocating for your health is such an interesting space for holistic healing. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think this is such an important topic to talk about, so I'm really looking forward to diving into it with you. And do you want to share a little bit about yourself, your story, and how you came to do what you do today?
Yeah, so I am a nutritional therapy practitioner, and I've been board certified in holistic nutrition. And my story really started, most of my life ago. I've always had health problems, chronic pain. I've had migraines since a young child, back pain, headaches. Later in my life, I was dealing with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which led to things like infertility, hypoglycemia issues. I had very painful cystic acne well into my 20s, a very strong health history, things that often left me feeling very broken and going to doctors and trying to get resolved, but being met with, a handful of medications that really only band-aided the symptoms. I would stop taking the medications and all the symptoms would come back. I was just left in the dark. There were no real answers. There was no education as to why is this occurring. You can imagine when me and my partner were trying to conceive a child, and that's when we found out that I had PCOS, and that could be why that I can't ovulate, don't have regular cycles. That led to a lot of heartache for both of us. And, part of my story is also that I spent most of that time in a system of beliefs where I basically just had to prove my faith. rather than putting energy and work into fixing the things. But it got to a point where I felt so broken and so in the dark that I began exploring on my own. I began researching how to repair my blood sugar. I actually had no idea that I could repair my cycles and actually become not polycystic. And that was amazing when I started to recover that. But in the beginning, it was mostly about my blood sugar, my weight, my acne. And I just began doing my own research and trying different methods for myself. Now, during that time, I worked for about 20 years in physical and regenerative medicine. So, working with providers who dealt with people who were dealing with intensive pain, who tried all the other things, and were working on systemically on not only the structure of those things and the cellular healing, but the inflammatory pieces, bringing down systemic inflammation. So, I learned a lot about that there, and collectively was just really inspired to become formally educated so that I could start helping other people who are also left in the dark, who have also been dismissed by their providers, who are dealing with these issues and not really understanding what they are, trying all the things and just getting no results. So collectively, that all became this inspiration for me to switch careers and get moving on this road to helping people figure it out.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And it sounds like it has been a long road for you, collecting information and advocating for yourself and really trying to find the answers on your own while not really receiving them in sort of the typical medical settings. And I do hear that from a lot of people and from a lot of women who are dismissed and they can't really find the cause of what's happening, sometimes over decades, which can be extremely frustrating and all the while dealing with pain and illness. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. Now, when you looked outside of your traditional medical providers and you looked at some different health paths that you could take, what did you find on your journey? What kind of things did you come across? And which of those things did you find very helpful for yourself?
It's hard to pinpoint just one or two things with that. Like I said in the beginning, my focus was on my blood sugar because I was having really severe, most of my life actually, I had really severe episodes of feeling faint when I stood up. Like when I would get hungry, I would get this, you've heard the term hangry. I nearly ruined my husband's engagement to me because I was hangry and I almost ruined his plans. We joke about that now, but there were times when it felt really unsafe and I was affecting the people around me. There was even a time where full disclosure, this might be a little queasy for some people, but I ended up getting really dizzy and vomiting at a grocery store because I had low blood sugar. So I was having these really, like, it was scary to be on my own. So I would say the blood sugar is really where it all started. That's where the ball started rolling. I was working with my blood sugar to make sure that it was stable. And I was getting to a point where I was feeling better. And what I didn't really understand during that time is that I was also repairing whatever was going on in my gut. So I'm willing to bet if I had done testing at that point, I would have found some pathogens, some bacterial overgrowth. These are all commonly things that I see in my PCOS clients. So to say what was I finding out there, I would say it was mostly focused on the blood sugar stuff. And by healing that, I was addressing my gut and then I was addressing my acne and like all these things sort of fell into place. And then I started to learn more and more about why that was. So yeah, it was really all about the blood sugar, the energy that comes from low blood sugar. You're just feeling tired, fatigued all the time. You're always worried about where your next meal would come from, what you were going to do on like vacations were always planned around around meals. What kind of food would I have access to? That sort of thing. So in the beginning, it was all blood sugar.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I imagine that that could apply to a lot of our listeners, and they might be struggling with the same problems and challenges. Now, how does the gut relate to everything that you just spoke about? How does the gut relate to chronic pain or PCOS or other health challenges or even emotional or mental health challenges that people might be experiencing? How does that all connect back to the gut?
It's difficult to put that in simple terms. So I would say most of what I see happening in my PCOS clients or people who just have general symptoms like that are going to have some kind of an overgrowth of bacteria. They may have other pathogens like candida overgrowth. something that our body is fighting against. And so what they might see is like bloat, constipation, blood sugar issues. They're always hungry. They feel hangry. What is happening when we have those pathogens in our gut is our adrenals are, which is responsible for our stress response. Those pathogens are a stressor. So our adrenals are firing all the time. Number one. Number two, our adrenals are a really big part of our blood sugar regulation. They work with the hypothalamus in the brain and the pituitary gland in the brain, and they make up what's called the HPA axis. If you think about it, that's constantly firing. And especially when we add into that, what we're told are the healthier things to eat are these little like 100-calorie packs of food, or to even reduce our calories. And we tend to opt for these things that are more carbohydrate heavy, as opposed to focusing on our protein and fats, because for many decades we were told that fat is bad. And really the idea that we're pulling away from that stuff means that we're consuming more of the refined carbohydrates. And I mean, I love a good junk food. I love a good pastry. I love baking. Baking is like one of my favorite things to do. But when we wake up and we get our coffee and we get our bagel and we have this kind of high for a couple of hours and then we crash at 10 o'clock, this is our HPA axis running us on this roller coaster. And all of that is perpetuating these gut pathogens. It's feeding them. Pathogens love to feed on carbohydrates. And so this also explains why you might always be hungry if you have something like that in your gut. So that's the simplest way of putting how the gut pathogens might relate. Your gut health really relates to even your mood, and then some other symptoms that we're talking about in PCOS. In regards to mental health, it also affects when we have these other viral factors or bacterial factors like Clostridia, which some of us have a Clostridia overgrowth. Those are actually robbing nutrients that are required to make things like serotonin, which is a mood regulator. So we have to consider that side of it too, from a strictly mental health side of these neurotransmitters that affect our mood: dopamine, serotonin, GABA. They're all being affected by these gut pathogens. And so when we can get in there and find out what's happening and calm down the adrenals, address a lifestyle that is conducive to supporting your adrenal glands and killing off those gut pathogens, we can get you on a road to better mood, better energy. That's the convoluted tie between gut health and mental health.
Yeah, wow, that is really fascinating. And I hear a lot about inflammation also, and that's sort of the root cause of a lot of health challenges, both physical and mental health challenges. So can the bacterial or viral growth in the gut kind of lead to that inflammation in the body and then make the conditions worse for people who are having health challenges?
100%. When we talk about when our body is trying to fight something, so yes, our adrenals are involved in that because it is a stressor, and our body, it needs to fight the stressor. It's doing what it's supposed to do. The problem is when it happens chronically, and the root cause is never resolved. We have this problem over and over again. Now, part of that system is your immune system. Part of your immune system's job is to create inflammation and then also to regulate it when the problem is over. It's called homeostasis. Our body has a lot of different systems set in place that regulate things like our body temperature. When our body temperature is too warm, it has a series of events that occur that cause us to sweat and cool us down. That's homeostasis. It's the same thing when we have pathogens in our gut. It's trying to fight that by sending these fighter cells, these immune cells that are white blood cells that are inflammatory. They dilate or widen blood vessels so that they can increase blood flow to the area. It's supposed to inflame. What's also supposed to happen is when the pathogen is dealt with, it's supposed to also bring that inflammation down. So you can imagine when the pathogen is not dealt with, that inflammation never goes down. And then we go into what's called a cell danger response. And that is basically our cells start to shut down things like thyroid hormone in order to save energy. Things like that start to occur. So yeah, inflammation is a big, I would say it's almost a separate piece, but it is interrelated with that gut health issue as well.
Yeah. That's really great that you explained that because I didn't know how that was all connected. So thank you so much for highlighting how that works together. I find that really interesting. And how do you work with your clients then on addressing these issues and on balancing gut health, on lowering inflammation? I imagine there's a lot to unpack and different things that clients experience. So, where do you start with that? And what are some of the steps that you might take to help people?
The first thing is really getting a really broad picture of their lifestyle, their eating habits, symptoms that they're experiencing. And so I have them do an intensive intake initially where they're doing a questionnaire that I like to use that gives us a lot of insight into different body systems, but as well as, I mean, even just demographic information, things about their upbringing. Were they breastfed as a child? That actually has a lot to do with our gut health just in the symptoms that they experience. We do a 4-day food and mood journal. So I'm having them write down everything they're eating. What is the quality of food that they're eating? What kind of mood were they in? What kind of activity did they do that day? How much water did they intake? Did they have a bowel movement? What was it like? Things like that. So I'm getting a very, very deep look at what their actual day to day lifestyle is. That's the very first place I start. And then we go, okay, so based on what you're telling me, it sounds like maybe this is happening. So we get some lab testing to confirm that. In a lot of cases of gut health, what I'm going to be doing is like a stool analysis or a urinary analysis of organic acids. And that helps us to find the pathogens. And meanwhile, what we're working on is the quality of food that they take in. So we're looking at, okay, so instead of maybe the Oreos, we choose a chocolate bar instead that's made with a few ingredients. Things like that, where we're really changing the quality of food that they're taking in, as well as understanding maybe when they should be eating and what types of balance they should be eating. So we're starting with this very basic foundational things. We're working on their sleep habits. We're working on anything to address that adrenal response. We need it to be there, but we want it to stop doing the roller coaster. We want it to be more stable throughout the day. So foundationally, we're working on all of that. We get lab testing to confirm what are we actually going to fight. And that helps us to determine, not all of my clients do this, but the ones with gut issues, we're usually having to go through like an eradication process where we want to actually kill off the pathogens and then rebuild their gut with good bacteria that can effectively work as an immune system against those in the future. We're setting up foundations for future health and then also dealing with the actual issue. So it's really multifaceted.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And when we spoke before the show, I really love the approach that you take with your clients, that it's very individualized and something that they can realistically do in their lives if there's lifestyle changes required and dietary changes required. Because as you said, if you try and impose something on someone that doesn't really fit into their life or their lifestyle, it's not something that they will continue doing. So I love that approach that you take, very individualized and trying to find out, so how are their lives now and what can be done to fit within that framework for them. So I love that. And did your career that you had before you went into private practice, did that have a bearing at all in the decision that you now wanted to help clients privately? What did you learn in that career that sort of made you say, I think I'm going to take this private and work with clients directly?
Taking it private was actually more of a logistics situation. So the clinic I had been working for about 5 years, I loved working there. I loved the patients that I worked with. I was charged with actually educating our patients on how inflammation works, what they can do nutritionally to get past it. We were doing food sensitivity on patients, which I was educated and trained to like guide them through why food sensitivities can affect their inflammation and how that's another tool that we can use to reduce inflammation while they're undergoing this intensive physical treatment to structurally change things and rehabilitate the tissues and things like that. So yeah, it was a very whole person approach. So it very much inspired me and really empowered me to further my education. And as I'm not formally educated, I left high school I got married very early. My husband was in school. We had a lot of student loan debt. It was never something I really wanted or needed. And so when I reached my late 30s and said, like, oh, I want to go back to school, it was kind of a strange event for me. But I believe that this job empowered me to do that. I loved the work that I do. I could see how it was helping people. And I wanted to know more about the nutritional aspect. And so I decided to go back to school. And initially, the plan was that I would be practicing nutrition for them and I would be continuing to help their patients. And COVID happened and it changed a lot of things, I think, for their business structure. And so ultimately, it actually just didn't make sense to keep me on board as a nutritionist. They wanted me to continue doing the work that I was doing before. And I didn't want that for myself. So, after a couple of years of actually really being overworked at that job, they were struggling to find staff and things like that. Meanwhile, I had a long commute and was also going to school. I reached burnout and my body was reacting physically. So, it really actually came down to my physical health and just logistics. It wasn't really something I had planned to do. And so I don't want to say I was forced into that change. I had a choice the entire time. But this is definitely not the path I had planned on. And here I am, and I love it because I have full control over how I can help people. And I think that empowers me to continue going. So, yeah, it did have a big impact in both the good and bad ways, which is interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like your personal experiences, both with your own health challenges and with your work, actually help you support clients better because you can really understand where they came from, where their challenges are. Maybe some of them are even struggling with stress and burnout, which don't really help holistic health either. Those can be major causes
Right.
of some of those challenges. So, yeah, it sounds like that really helped you work in a way to support clients really from their root causes and working forward to find out what's going on. So, yeah, wonderful. And I just want to touch before we wrap up on something that we didn't talk about yet, and that is specifically for women, there is also the hormonal component when we talk about health and especially the PCOS also. Do you work on hormonal challenges with people as well from a nutritional standpoint, or can there be anything done from a nutritional standpoint?
Yes, I do help people with hormones. I wouldn't say I'm a hormone specialist. There are people in my field who will go more specifically into the numbers on the hormones. Foundationally, though, there is a lot of interrelation with hormones and gut health. One of the biggest central factors of that is our liver. So, our liver, if you think of it as a filter, it's charged with filtering out everything that comes into our body. And it's responsible for saying, what do we have too much of? What is toxic? And what it does is it essentially changes the form of whatever those toxins are and prepares them for elimination. So that might be through the kidneys, it might be through the skin, it might be through all these components that we have of actually getting rid of them. What we tend to forget is that the liver is not just going to get rid of things that we think of as toxins, so like viruses or pesticides from food or medications, things like that. What also is a burden on our body are excess hormones or excess of anything. When we have something out of balance that affects, how much estrogen we produce, we may have too little or too much estrogen. And then when we have too much estrogen, we need our liver to be able to get rid of that. And so the liver, when we have these gut imbalances, is doing a lot of extra work. And in oftentimes, what I actually see is that the liver has become congested due to the type of food that we're taking in. When we eat processed food, when we eat all the time, when we're messing with that HPA axis and we have this roller coaster effect, what's actually happening is our liver is converting things like glucose into fat and then having to convert fat into glucose to try to stabilize things. That's another thing that it's charged with. And when that occurs, we start to develop these fatty deposits in our liver. And if you think of a filter, let's say like an air filter for, your air conditioning or a water filter, if that gets clogged up with something, it's not going to be a very effective filter. And so that would be one of the biggest pieces that I also look at in the entire system is how is your liver functioning? So at a foundational level, yes, we are definitely working on hormones. When we work on foundational pieces and I see that there are still hormone things to be dealing with more specifically, that's when I can refer them to a specialist that works on hormones. But for the most part, we resolve a lot of those issues just by addressing that root cause factor.
Yeah, that's some great information. And thank you for explaining that. I'm so fascinated by how all of that is connected and how when you start working with nutrition and gut health, a lot of those things actually fall into balance and regulate themselves. So, yeah, that sounds like a really good start for people on a healing journey for help that they may have not gotten from their general practitioner, and they might be looking for some additional support and to answer questions that didn't have an answer as to what's going on with their health. So, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the programs and services that you offer. So if listeners have found that this episode inspired them and they'd like to work with you, how can you help them? What do you offer for them?
The first thing I suggest for most people is to jump onto my monthly Q&A call. It's a free public Zoom call where people can come and just ask their questions. I work one-on-one with clients in 3-month increments. And some people find that a little bit like, oh, am I ready to commit to this 3-month program? So I invite them to come to the Q&A first. And that way they can ask questions with no commitment. And then once we kind of find out what are their health goals, what are they actually looking for out of this, then we can decide if a 3-month program is actually a good fit for them. And so really those are my two main offers is come to the Q&A call, get your questions answered. If they prefer a private call, they can also book a consultation with me, and that's no cost to them. But really it's the 3-month program. I call it my Reclaim Your Health program because that is exactly what we're doing. And we're empowering them to reclaim that health and to understand it going forward and to have intuition to future symptoms or future things that come up for them.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. And we will be linking to all of Hilary's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there for the links to her Q&A and for the links to working with her on the 3 months program. We will put all that in the show notes for you. Well, this has been another incredible episode, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed this journey into advocating for your health as much as I have. I have to say, I have learned so much in the past half hour from you, and thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I think this provides some great information for our listeners who might be struggling with health challenges and not really knowing where to start. And I hope that they get in touch with you and start working with you. So thank you so much for your time today, Hilary, and thank you for all the wisdom and knowledge that you brought. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, this was great. I love the work that you're doing here, so I'm happy to be part of it.
Oh, thank you so much. And right back at you. Keep doing what you're doing and helping people who are struggling with their health. Thank you so much and take care.
Bye.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.